Sunday morning meditation service where we're doing a call and response, and they're really simple chants, so don't think about what you sound like. Just kind of get into what the message is and enjoy responding. Okay. Creator of all life, what a blessed world we
Good morning, everyone. I received an article in the mail from one of our members suggesting it might give us some insight into how to increase the numbers attending our Sunday service. This article he sent me came from Christianity Today Monitor. I guess it's a small newspaper somewhere. In Richardson, Texas, they're still talking about the worldly ways of the First Unitarian Church. On a recent Sunday, Pastor William Nichols invited Diana King, a Unitarian member from Fort Worth, to take part in the Sunday service. She did, and when she was through, Miss King, an exotic dancer at a Dallas nightclub, was wearing only a G-string. The congregation of 200 adults and children watched in fascinated silence as she shed her clothes in time with the recorded music. Reverend Nichols said the dance fit very well into our service, and nobody complained. He also said he didn't think anyone was aroused, but he said, I don't consider the erotic aspect of the dance wrong. After all, that's the way we were all conceived. Miss King said it was something she wanted to do for a long time, and she would like to conduct classes for the women in the church so that she could do it again and have them join her on a Sunday. So, I've got to call in to Miss King to see if she'd be interested in coming to Boulder. All right, well, that particular article brought to mind the story in the Bible that I'm going to share with you this morning. Most of you are aware of this story, possibly more aware of it than any other story in the Bible. Everybody seems to remember this particular story. This is in chapter 8 of it's John chapter 8. Jesus went into the mountain of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came in unto him. And he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? This they said, tempting him, that they might have cause to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard not what they said. But when they insisted on him answering, he stood up and he said, can we have this on the PowerPoint, please? And as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her. And once more he bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. And it goes on to say, but when they heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, They went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, with the eldest, even unto the youngest. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those that accuse you? Has no man condemned you? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. So, we should be aware that when we read the New Testament, scriptures especially, we should be very involved in discerning exactly what the story is saying. Because then you'll discover certain things about the story. You may notice when reading this story that the man who was involved in the adultery with her was never brought forth to be stoned. That's somewhat reasonable, considering that, historically speaking, it was a patriarchal society, and men were considered to be the leaders of their household and over all women. You might also notice, if you read the story very discerningly, that the scribes and Pharisees weren't intent on stoning the woman, not as intent as trapping Jesus for what they were expecting of him to do was to oppose the law of Moses and to say not to stone her, which if he did that, then they had cause to stone him. So that's the way the story unfolds. Then you might notice that Jesus takes a holy pause in which he seeks the wisdom of God. So he bends down and writes with his finger on the ground. And then he rises and says to them as they press him, Let he who is without sin among you be the first to cast a stone at her. And so what he's doing is he's forcing them to check in on their own conscience. And the fact that they depart, the eldest first, in that order, the eldest first all the way to the youngest, is the Bible writer's way of just indicating to us that the longer we live, the less we suppose we have no sin or error in our own consciousness. So the eldest is the first to leave, and then incrementally they all wind up leaving the scene. And Jesus is left alone with the woman. You might notice that the accusers walk away, beginning with the elder, declaring, so Jesus winds up there with the woman alone, and he says to her, Has no man condemned you? She says, No man, Lord. And he says, Neither do I condemn you. Sin no more. This story is not just, as most of the stories in the New Testament, it's not just an historic event, or you might think of it as a historic event declaring some element of morality. It is a little deeper than that. If you look into it, you become to realize, if you understand the Bible, the woman in the New Testament is always the soul. So for her to be accused means that anyone who is accusing or chastising another is doing it unto himself or herself, because that is the very soul. All of the accusations made on that personal level are accusations that go against one's own divine nature or the soul itself. And as you look at it, it's interesting from a historic standpoint. They say she was caught in the very act of adultery. I mean, where were they? Under the bed, the scribes and Pharisees piled underneath the bed. But these scriptures, when you read about the scribes and Pharisees and you listen to their remarks, deep within, you catch the hypocrisy in their remarks. Such hypocrisy as accusing Jesus of healing on the Sabbath. And Jesus, once again, in that situation, appeals to their higher awareness or their conscience and says, which of you, having a son who falls into a pit on the Sabbath, does not reach to help him out? So Jesus keeps countering their attempts to trap him in saying something that will be an accusation they can use to condemn him. You know what most people don't ask when they're reading stories like this in the New Testament? They don't ask why the Pharisees wanted to actually accuse him and stone him. So we're talking about our inner nature, and these scribes and Pharisees are our own hypocritical notions of life. See, the hypocritical notions of life, since these stories are for all humanity, for all ages, and they're speaking about the psychology of a human being or human beings. And so these Pharisees and scribes are the hypocritical notions that we have. These notions of blame and chastisement can only arise in an unenlightened human being. There has to be the unenlightened awareness that perceives oneself as being a separate body-mind, capable of objectively observing the conditions and circumstances that one looks upon and making clear judgments and pronouncements. That is the unenlightened state of awareness. And the scriptures, along with all the masters down through the ages, are trying to inspire us to take to task our own awareness. This is the way the insightful spiritual consciousness operates, attempting to bring us to a higher level of awareness. And what would be the difference? Look at this. The difference in the unenlightened awareness is that we're all born and raised in the illusion of separation. That is, that each supposes himself to be, and it's natural in that state, supposes himself, herself to be a separate body, mind with a brain in a world of separate others and separate phenomena. But what are the scriptures trying to do? What are the true masters down through the ages? What does Buddhism attempt to do? It's attempting to get us to take a deeper look, to become more introspective in our own consciousness. And if we become more introspective in our own consciousness, we'll not only discover that we are operating in error, but that there is a part of us that is calling to us to discard those errors. The whole spiritual journey starts with a sorting out of what is actually true and what is actually false. Calling the individual to cast out, discard the errors, and embrace the divine understanding, the Christ consciousness, Buddha nature, the truth that makes us free. There's no freedom for anyone in the initial state of consciousness. We all try. We try to make life work from a perspective of separation. That is, we want to make the world come across to fulfill our personal expectations, our desires, our demands, our needs. This is natural because of where we were born and the consciousness of the people around us and the world in which we live. The whole world is what the master of life, Jesus, if you will, Christ consciousness, truthfully, calling us to do what? He's saying, overcome the world. He's saying, I have overcome the world. And I am with you. And you are in me. So, this is our real calling. If we're really going to seek harmony, happiness, insight, peace, and freedom, it can only come when we arrive in the divine awareness or the highest state of consciousness. What's the difference between the highest state of consciousness and the limited initial state of awareness? The difference is between the illusion of ego-centered separation and an awareness that everything is, in fact, sacred. And if everything is sacred, it is not going to be the object of our blame. If everything is sacred, it's only worthy of our consideration and forgiveness and blessing, because it's still God that hasn't awakened yet. It's still God that hasn't awakened yet. And so, how do we participate in the awakening is by awakening ourselves. Because if we are awakening ourselves, then we are. That energy that we are is interconnected with every other mind, every other soul, every other person, to some degree. Regardless of the amount that someone is denying the presence or even the existence of a creator, regardless of that, we are here to simply bless. We are here to simply forgive. Because that is declaring the nature of truth. Everything is sacred, not separate, sacred. And that's spoken to clearly by A Course in Miracles. Let's take a look at this on the PowerPoint. In the old text, page 187, paragraph 2, in the new editions in 202, if your brothers and sisters are part of you and you blame them for your deprivation, you are blaming yourself. And you cannot blame yourself without blaming them. That is why blame must be undone, not seen elsewhere. Lay it to yourself, and you cannot know yourself, for only the ego blames at all. Self-blame is therefore ego identification, as much an ego defense as blaming others. You cannot enter God's presence if you attack his Son. When his Son lifts his voice in praise of his Creator, he will hear the voice for his Father. Yet the Creator cannot be praised without his Son, for their glory is shared and they are glorified together. Okay, there's some things that if you're not familiar with A Course in Miracles, you need to understand. The Son includes everyone. Every man, woman, and child that is ever born is the Son of God, according to A Course in Miracles. So even they need to be, when you have to lift up your consciousness to the divine, it is also unto them that you must lift up your consciousness. For you are all one in the awareness of the Creator. To come into the consciousness divine is to come into the consciousness of the one with being God, or the divine nature in every living one. So you see, we have a very clear, picture of life as it is lived from the limited definition to the enlightened awareness. So in Unity, you may hear me say, when we enter God consciousness. But look at what it's saying here. And by the way, can we take this back again, please? If your brothers and sisters are part of you and you blame them for your deprivation, you are blaming yourself. And you cannot blame yourself without blaming them, which is what the story about the woman caught in adultery, she's the soul, and you can't be accusing her without accusing yourself. Although the hypocrites within you will try to nudge you to believe that you really have the ability to judge and blame and bring whatever justified punishment you believe is necessary, you are being fooled and cheated. And you cannot blame yourself without blaming them. That is why blame must be undone, not seen elsewhere. Lay it to yourself, and you cannot know yourself, not your true self, for only the ego blames at all. Self-blame is therefore ego identification as much an ego defense as blaming others. I didn't capitalize that. That's capitalized in the Course in Miracles. You cannot enter God's presence if you attack His Son. This is the ultimate truth. This is the most cogent, pointed truth. What it is saying to all human beings that would read this is that in any moment that you are holding a grievance against anyone or anything in life, you are blocking God consciousness. You are blocking the awareness of joy and mastery. So look at that. Our whole journey then comes down to becoming keenly aware, courageous enough, meditated enough, to pause when negative thoughts are coming to mind. Negative feelings are rising within us. Do we go forward in those, even though we may not take action quite often? The fact is that the negative thinking and emotions are blocking you from feeling joy. Do you know that the masters of life that have taken to task their own awareness live almost in constant joy? They live above the machinations of the world, the madness of humanity. They have checked out. They have left. They have taken to task the errors that they grew up with and said, they don't work to bring fulfillment. And so we are called, as all that would become masters are called, to take to task our own awareness. And I guess I left, this is a very special thing here. When I take something like this, a yellow piece of stick-it, and put it over a piece of my notes, it means you better pay attention to this, Jack. So it wants me to tell you, we all begin developing our own personal consciousness from birth. And over the years, our own personality becomes the me first, self-motivated seeker of personal advantages and praise. When this first personal awareness comes up short in producing harmony, fulfillment, and inner peace, the mind usually opens or awakens to the inner awareness, which starts a new introspection, an approach to living a God-centered life, which requires introspection. How would we actually ever get, can you, if you're not there, some of you are, and, but when you're not, just imagine what it would be like if you have no fear. And how could you have no fear unless you became aware that your soul, in fact, is eternal and going through a human experience to learn to be more divine, not only in origin, because that you can't change, but to become divine in expression, to become part of the healing consciousness, is to become divine in expression. And the first thing that heals is your own life. Your life heals. And all the useless, unnecessary suffering that goes with the illusion of separation, the blame, the condemnation, the on and on negative, sometimes vengeful feelings, all of that is dissolving. And what do you have? The joy of being truthfully one with God. You're still living your personal life, but you're living in the higher awareness that everything that you are and everything you perceive is sacred. And all this journey, when people talk about evolution, they're not talking about the evolution taking place quickly with the outer physical masses of humanity. They're talking about the inner evolution required to bring that about. And anyone can enter into that inner evolution so that you rise out of your limited, negative, error-prone thoughts into divine awareness, and you find the peace of mind, the joy, the love, the insight that moves you from moment to moment to moment. There are no fears involved. While almost everything that is in the initial state of consciousness, the ego-centered state, is motivated by some form of fear or worry or concern. A life without worry or concern anymore can only happen when you have entered into the reality that you are divine, that you are eternal. And that is what is meant in the Bible, the truth that will make you free. So let me share this other quote from A Course in Miracles. You can read this in page 187 in the new edition, 202. At God's altar, Christ waits for the restoration of himself in you. Boy, is that different than the historic idea of Christ. At the altar, which is within each and every person, Christ waits for the restoration of himself in you. God knows his Son as wholly blameless as himself, and he is approached through the appreciation of his Son. Christ waits for your acceptance of him as yourself. I guess you could say, in its truest sense, that's accepting Christ as your Savior. That's not the historic Jesus that stands between you and God, but your own divine nature that is God incarnate in you. Christ waits for your acceptance of him as yourself, your true self, and of his wholeness as yours. For Christ is the Son of God, who lives in his Creator and shines with his glory. Christ is the extension of the love and the loveliness of God, as perfect as his Creator and at peace with him. Can we take this back again, please? So you see the shift away from religion, traditional religion, which really relies a lot on keeping one feeling guilty and incapable without the help of some middlemen, priests, and weekly confessions, and things like that. So you can see that's religion, and they do it up big, and people are willing to support that, seemingly no matter what the people involved in proselytizing that do. Are they really open-minded to what they are calling the workings of God? This is the truth and the workings of God. At God's altar, Christ waits for the restoration of himself in you. God knows his Son as wholly blameless as himself, and he is approached through the appreciation of his Son. Christ waits for your acceptance of him as yourself, and of his wholeness as yours. For Christ is the Son of God, who lives in his Creator and shines with his glory. Christ is the extension of the love and the loveliness of God, as perfect as his Creator and at peace with him. How did you get here? Did you just manifest here? Okay, we're going to do a meditation. See, I'm not really free myself. She hits the bowl and I've got to meditate. Okay. Take a couple of deep breaths. As you release your breath, release any cares or concerns that you may be harboring within you. There's no need for that, but if you just take these few moments to be okay, sitting here, practicing meditation, it'll go well. You'll move closer to healing and peace. You may want to take this particular truth into your mind. Gently give your attention to this truth. The Father and I are one. Giving appreciation for what rises before me, moment to moment to moment. The Father and I are one, giving appreciation for what rises before me, moment to moment to moment. The Father and I are one, giving appreciation for all that rises before me, moment to moment to moment. as we go forth from this meditation to those places we occupy in time and space. Let's go forth with a greater devotion to being awake in the process of living. For this opportunity in every moment, we give thanks. To this we say, Amen. We will take an offering for unity now. And as we're preparing to do that, I'd like to say to those of you that are watching this live stream, you can scroll down to the bottom of the screen. It'll show you the different ways here that you can donate to Unity of Boulder. And I do encourage you to donate. Make yourself a part of the truth that you are seeking to embrace. And everyone here can bring into their hands, into their minds, that gift that they'd like to make to Unity. And let's bless the gift with this prayer. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, because I give. And so it is.
Come to the light, the candle of hope, everyone gather near. Come to the light and warm in its glow, bringing the light to hear. This is the time, this is the place, we let our joy be raised. Lift up your voice, sing and